Hey now people, on the agenda today we have Level 7 Omega Protocol. I've had this game for a while, I'm just now getting around to reviewing it, which I do apologize for, but this is from Privateer Press, and this is the second game in their Level 7 series of board games. And for those that don't know, Privateer Press is usually into miniatures games. They have War Machine and Hordes, and maybe that's it actually, but that's where they started. That's what most of the games that they do relate to. But I think that the Level 7 series was their first foray into big box board games that you can just bust out and play on their own. Now the first game was Level 7 Escape, which I've never played. I actually own it because I got it in a trade after I got a Level 7 Omega Protocol, which I guess is some sort of hint as to what I feel about this game. But I've heard that it's got a great theme and terrible gameplay. But I'm still open-minded and I still want to try it and find out for myself. And then the newest one that's coming out that it's already kind of out. I think it was out at Gen Con, but the full retail release hasn't hit yet, is Level 7 Invasion, which I'm eager to try, and I've heard some mixed reviews of it, but I still think it's going to be worth a go anyways. Now, the story of Level 7 is that years and years ago, like in Area 51, I think, of course, there was an alien ship crash landed, and the alien that came out was Dr. Kronos, who was like an evil, mad scientist amongst his alien race. Like they look like the gray aliens. And he wanted to make a deal with the U.S. government back then in like the 40s or the 50s. If he wanted to have refuge and sanctuary from the aliens that were hunting him down, and so he would hang out on Earth and help the humans by giving them new technologies and new alien technologies. And also in exchange, the Doctor got to experiment on humans, like sort of the detritus of society. So in Level 7 Escape, the theme is that you are one of those humans who was abducted by the government, given to Dr. Kronos in like the present day or the near future, and now you and a bunch of the others have escaped. You and the other players represent the escapees, and you're trying to get out of the facility. But of course, Dr. Kronos isn't going to let that happen, so he lets all of these his alien henchmen come after you, and also these alien-human hybrids that he's developed. And it's just purely, it's like a semi-co-op game where you kind of got to help each other and you got to kind of get out, okay? Level 7 Omega Protocol is you're the cleanup crew sent by the government. It's chaos in the facility where this is all going down, and you are the Marines who are sent in, the Spec Ops team, to clear out the alien menace and kill Dr. Kronos. That's the main thing, because it's not that you're a benevolent force, it's that the government wants to keep this all under wraps, and if Dr. Kronos gets out and, you know, as nefarious as he is and spreads word about it, it's just going to blow up the whole thing. So you have to go in, silence Dr. Kronos, take care of the situation, blow the facility up, and so on. How this is done is in a one versus all format where one player controls the alien hordes, I guess essentially representing Dr. Kronos, and in some scenarios Dr. Kronos is actually present, and the rest of the players are the actual Marines, the Spec Ops team, and are working together cooperatively against that one other player to succeed in missions in sort of Descent style fashion. You actually have a separate book with separate scenarios and different board layouts, things like that. Tons of minis, tons of cardboard, tons of plastic. Sounds like it's right up my alley actually, but let's go ahead and do a brief overview of the game, then we're going to come back and I'll let you know what I think. Okay, I'm going to try to give you a brief overview of Level 7 Omega Protocol, but really there's just so much going on in this game that I'm not going to be able to give you even close to a comprehensive overview of what's going on here. You see, I have so much stuff crowded on the table even, I can't even fit it all in because there's just a lot of little details to this. So I'm just going to race through some of the main concepts of the game. Now the theme of this game is, aside from the main story of the Level 7 series, is just that you're a team of commandos going down to an underground research facility trying to clear out these aliens and find Dr. Kronos, the evil alien who's controlling all of them. Wipe it out, clear everything out, cover up the experiments that were going on here. This is a scenario-driven game, so you're going to have one whole book that the game uses called the Mission Guide that just gives you different scenarios to go through, different map setups and goals and objectives, which you could always make your own as well. And this is also a one versus all game, so one player is going to be controlling the alien overseer, I guess, controlling Dr. Kronos, and you're going to have your own little dashboard of stuff that you can do, but you're mainly doing the setup, putting out the randomized room cards that you'll flip over as the players go through each of the different rooms. You'll mobilize the enemy aliens and you'll give them actions, things like that. The other players take control of the squad of commandos who are going down through the facility. And you have each character of the players is going to get their own little dashboard card here that will tell you what you are. You can be the team leader, you can be the countermeasures specialist, you can be the heavy support specialist, the rifleman, or the medic, or I'm sorry, the reconnaissance specialist. You all have different starting stats, different weapons, different abilities, and you'll gain more as the game progresses. You may gain different investigation cards. You're also allowed to outfit your characters with kit cards that will give you special abilities. Like in each type of character has their own set of kit cards they can pick from, following the rules of having a certain amount of points to spend at the beginning of the game. But there will also be some generic kit cards as well. So once you have all that set up, the Overseer is going to set up this map and set the objectives, set the randomized rule cards, and all the different doors and things around the map. Then you'll begin. The players will start off in a certain spot. And first you're going to go through the Commando Phase, which is first, whenever the commandos take actions during their turn, they're actually going to accrue adrenaline. These are adrenaline tokens. And what the adrenaline tokens do, they're actually going to go to the Overseer, into his stack of adrenaline tokens. And on the Overseer's turn, he can use those adrenaline tokens to fuel the powers on his dashboard. So it's very important that on your turn, you only do actions that are really necessary as one of the commandos, because the more actions you do, the stronger you're making the Overseer. You're giving him more actions on his turn. Now, just to show you some of the cool minis that come with the game here, like these are the different commando minis. They're a darker gray than the rest of the minis that are in the game, representing the aliens, which are these guys here. So those are some of the bigger ones that don't come out in every scenario. Most of the ones you'll see, especially in the starting scenarios, will be like these smaller guys here. But the Overseer may or may not have access to all this, depending on the scenario and what his dashboard is like. Now on your turn, you can do things like move, and you can attack, and you can try to examine doors. And all the doors on these maps are tiles that you'll flip over when you encounter them. And they may be like this, they may be locked, which means you have to pass an intelligence check. Or they may be jammed, which means you have to pass a strength check in order to bust it open. Anytime you do a check in this game, whether it's an attack or whether it's trying to pass a test, you'll have to roll these dice. You have black dice and you have red dice. The black dice are inferior to the red dice. They have less of these hit markers on them, but it can be more difficult to get the red dice. And it's just simply a matter of rolling enough hits to bypass whatever check is involved with whatever you're trying to do, or roll enough hits to get past an enemy's defense. For instance, if we take a look at one of the enemy cards here, like the Blaster, this will tell you all their different vital stats. You have their activation fee, which is the adrenaline that the Overseer has to spend in order to activate them. They have the amount of wounds that they can take. Their movement on their turn when they're activated. Here are the ranged and melee defense. The reason why there's two numbers is that if you're able to get enough hits to get that second number, when the commandos are attacking them, they'll actually take 2 wounds instead of 1. And then every one of the aliens has a different special ability, and will tell you what dice you're rolling for that ability as well. And there's even a card for Dr. Kronos himself, but I probably shouldn't show you in case there's spoilers. Now, the thing about the commandos are, during their turn, they're actually going to choose stance cards as well, which will kind of gauge what they're able to do on their turn. So, for instance, the commanding stance has movement of 2 and has a ranged defense of 2 and a melee defense of 2. But if they were to do cautious advance, instead you'd still have the movement of 2, but you'd have a ranged defense of 4 and a melee defense of 3. But your abilities might be different as well. Down here is the maximum adrenaline that you can actually spend on your turn. But remember, the more adrenaline you spend, the more that you're giving to the Overseer. And really what's going to happen is, in any true style of any kind of tactical miniatures game or games like Descent, you're going to be moving through the facility. As you go into rooms, you'll flip over the room cards. There might be something like event shows up in an ambush, which means that enemies might spawn onto the board. Or you can actually go on different spots and gain investigation tokens, which means you'll be able to look in the investigation stack, and it might be things like ammo, or in this case stimulants, which say that you can discard this card to move all of your adrenaline tokens to the Overseer's energy pool. And which is a bad thing, because the Overseer is going to get adrenaline, but it does mean that you're able to use more adrenaline on your turn. You have a med pack, things like that. So you're moving around as the commandos, trying to get investigate the rooms, trying to reach your goal, and the goal is different for every scenario that you have. Then during the Overseer's turn, that's when the Overseer is going to use all the adrenaline that he accrued at the start of the Commando's phase and use them on the different parts of his dashboard. So you have things like dodge here, which by spending 3 you can interrupt, force a commando to reroll an attack against one of your guys. So that can actually happen during the commando's turn. You have clone flankers, so you can spawn up to 2 clones at events. You have one here called Cave-In, which is actually takes a lot of adrenaline, but once you do it, you're going to be able to drop rubble markers down on the board to make the terrain difficult and possibly injure the commandos as well. And a lot of times there's a time limit in the game. You'll have a certain point in the game where if you don't meet it by a certain point, things are going to get more difficult for the commandos, or you might lose altogether. And every commando, I know I'm just kind of going all over the place, but there's just a ton of stuff in this game. But every commando each round is going to be designated as a leader, and this is how you determine turn order. You actually give out cards to each player in the order that you want them to go. And it is, of course, possible for the commandos to get downed, in which case they are forced to take the down stance, where they're purely on the defensive. I know I skipped over a lot of stuff, but this is the game. You're just trying, one player is the Overseer, the other players are the commandos. You're just trying to mill through the facility, mow through all the enemies, rolling as many dice as possible, using your special abilities, and just trying to meet the objective scenarios. So let's go to my final thoughts. Now, when I talk about thematic games, this is what I'm talking about. If you're not coming to Omega Protocol for the theme, then there's no reason for you to be here. I mean, the gameplay is really cool too, but this game is just dripping with theme, and that is its big selling point. This is like every action alien-oriented movie you've ever seen from like the last couple of decades. I mean, it is just like Aliens, the movie, where you're Marines going through all these tunnels trying to fend off aliens that are popping out of grates, and you've got all these guns and cool flamethrowers and things like that, and you're acting in squad, and you've got squad tactics. It feels like first-person shooters. I mean, it really pays homage to all of these different aspects of the science fiction genre, and it does it really well in that regard, going through the different scenarios and having different setups and different goals and having the hidden cards and things and searching rooms. All of this really, really works very well with the mechanics. They even thought of a very good way to explain how the Overseer, the bad guy player, gets his stuff. It's because you're feeding these aliens, feed off of the adrenaline of the humans who are in their facility, and you use that to bring out more aliens, and it's a really, really cool aspect. And you can do, like I said, you can do cool things like have them pop out of grates, and you know, it's just dripping with theme. I can't say it enough. It's the best thing about this game by far. Component-wise, everything is cool too. There's tons of little bits in this, and it is one of the criticisms of this game and any kind of game like this, like Descent. It's fiddly. I mean, it is. There's tons of little things to keep track of, lots of cardboard, lots of setup involved in getting this out. But you have all these cool bits like the miniatures, and once you have everything set up, it looks really, really impressive. It's just a chore to get to that point and making sure everything's running smoothly. And it's going to take you a few games to get the game under your feet and actually feel like you know what you're doing without having to constantly refer to the rule book, because there are a lot of things to keep track of. So this isn't going to be for people who don't want that and just want to bust out the game, set it up real quick, and just keep going. It's more of an experience than that. It's kind of like in the same vein as Eldritch Horror and those kind of games, and Descent, like I said already. But as the gameplay goes, it's very, very cool. I already talked about the Overseer. I can't always forget, it's the Overseer or Overlord, who has the control of the alien forces. You build your dashboard, which is a really neat aspect, and getting the adrenaline tokens and you know, wanting them to spend, the good guys to spend more and more actions. Like, yes, yes. I mean, it sucks that they're doing that because they're taking actions to shoot your guys or get closer to their main objective, but they're also feeding you and giving you more abilities that you can use. And having a wide variety of abilities that you can use in certain circumstances is very, very cool. Do you spawn more people? Do you try to give bonuses and buffs to the people, the aliens you already have out there? Do you try to like bring the ceiling down? Really crazy effects that might cost you a lot of adrenaline, but at the right time, timed correctly, they're awesome. So I really like that aspect of it, and this is definitely one of those one versus all games where you can feel like you have a ton of power and just have a lot of fun as that one player. Now, for the rest of the players, it's also really cool. This is also one of those games where I would eagerly play either side, even if the Overseer might be a little more fun. having your own unique squad member that have your own special abilities and things you can do to help the group is super cool. And your characters are, somewhat customizable. You have different skill cards that you have, and there's just different things that everyone focuses on that just really makes you feel like this is one of those RPG in a box types games where you have your own contribution. You don't feel the same as everyone else, and you have to work together. The game can be difficult for the good guys, as I guess they're the good guys, or the squad, we'll call them that. You have to work together. You have to have good tactics. You have to know when to focus. You can't do the in most cases, you can't do the split the party thing and just hot dog it and go off on your own. You will lose horribly that way. This is not about getting the most loot and getting the most points or anything like that. You're working together to survive and meet your objectives in the fastest, most efficient way possible. And the game rewards you for that and punishes you if you don't, horrendously. So I think as a co-op game, at least from the side of the players going against the one player, it works really, really well. It really encourages teamwork. And even as the overseer, I liked when I saw the other players working together, even if it meant that I was going to lose. Because it's a cool aspect of the game that you don't always see in either co-op or semi-co-op games. Someone's always, a lot of games, someone's always trying to be the best at something. And this one is just like, how can I help you? How can we get through this together? Who's this equipment or this card going to be most useful for? Those types of things. So really, really cool game overall. I really, really enjoy this game. Very thematic. The complaints would be that it's a bit long. Any kind of game like this is going to be long because you're going to, especially when you have a ton of setup time, which is another issue. Lots of fiddliness, lots of tokens to keep track of. It's going to be kind of a bear to get through the rule book. The rules are not the best, which I think Privateer Press is unfortunately starting to get known for, but because maybe board games are not their first specialty, but it's good enough, and you'll get through it after a couple of games and have a really great experience. This is not for everyone. This is one of the quintessential of Ameritrash games of our time, I would say. But for me, that's great. And if you're into that, if you like squad-based tactical games, but you don't want to, invest in a whole miniatures game, you still want that in a box, in a board game box, I would definitely go for this one. I think that even though you have a limited number of scenarios, there's still enough replayability here. And if the game apparently has done well, and even though they've done a sequel that has nothing to do with the gameplay of this version, the Invasion one, I still think that they'll come back to this and do more scenarios at some point. But even so, it's worth it. Even if you just replay the same ones, it's that fun. Level 7 Omega Protocol, don't miss it. My name is Nick, this has been Board Game Brawl, and I'm reminding you to get out there and game every day and in every way. Take care.